I want to ask you more about the work that you've done through PeaceTrees Vietnam, Jerilyn. You've brought U.S. veterans who fought in Quang Tri province actually back there. You've built schools, you've built community centers, you have this education program that's helping keep children safe from these unexploded ordinances. Tell me about one of the trips, Jerilyn, where you brought U.S. soldiers who actually fought there back to Vietnam and what that was like.
I'd like to tell you the story of, I've led many, many trips of veterans, but this story really stands out because this is the story of my brother Dan's fiancée, Gail Garcelon. And she called me in 2018. She lives in Texas and we're very close. She said, I'm ready to go to Vietnam. I'd like to be there on the 50th anniversary of the day Dan was shot down. I said, yes. So I immediately wrote to our partners in Hanoi. And so we had a small group. 2 of them were helicopter pilots. And we had an experience that was almost unbelievable. The way in which Gail was welcomed by the leaders in Hanoi and offered their condolences for the loss of her partner. I will show you pictures of this that are unbelievable. And this means that the 2 helicopter pilots were with us too, and they're both very bright. So an enriched experience that was, I still have it I can have it in my heart. It's in my heart, sitting with them for 3 hours around a big table. And they brought mothers who lost their kids. They brought wives who lost their husbands. And so we had about 20 people around this table, Americans and Vietnamese. And everyone was in tears at the finish, including the pilots, because we could never have imagined, really, that we could be around the table sharing our most painful losses and knowing that our new friends knew every single thing we were saying because they had them too. Incredible. So the rest of that trip was like that. Norm is this incredible photographer. He was stationed in Quang Tri. His photos from 1968 are incredible, before it was completely, bombed out. The way they were greeted, the way they were welcomed, the way the leaders, wherever we were, it was incredible. Gail was treated as my mother went when she was 90. My mother was treated like the queen of the country, the queen visitor of the country. But Gail, these are things that are hard to imagine, that we could go from the day I got the news that Dan was killed to today, that our Vietnamese partners are our there's a tight fit. We are so working together as partners because they know and we know.
Jerilyn, I had a chance to meet your mom before she passed away, and that must have been an amazing experience when Ray got to go to Vietnam with you and to meet mothers who had lost their children in the war as well.
Yes.
What was that moment like when she met those moms?
It was like being in heaven. It was like being in heaven. The mothers, where we work is in the area of Quang Tri province and Quang Binh province now, where the ethnic minority families live. So they are, do you remember the word montagnard that was used during the war? Mm-hmm. So each tribe, there are 54 tribes in Vietnam. And there are two tribes in Quang Tri province where we are, the Van Q and the Paco. And so the purpose of this trip was to dedicate the kindergarten that a large number of American pilots had contributed to build this kindergarten in honor of my brother and 20 other pilots. There's a whole roster on the wall. And so when we arrived at the day for the blessing of the kindergarten, and they asked my mom to speak first, they would never. Oh no, they would always ask the ambassadors to speak first, right? But the ambassadors were second. They invited my mom to come up to speak. She was quite tall, as you know, and she was speaking, saying, "I'm here today because I've waited 40 years to meet you all. And I'm sorry that it took me so long," she said.
Oh,
And just as she said that, one of the local women, one of the Vietnamese women from the Women's Union, lifted up this very tiny grandmother, age 92, Madame Ho Chi. Let's see, she has a name from her tribe, and she lifted this tiny little mother into my mom's arms. And they just threw their arms around each other and cried and laughed because she told my mom, and it was translated, "I lost my two sons when the war passed by our village." And they finished speaking, and the two ambassadors jumped up to their feet. Ambassador Mike Mahalik, that you just met, and the Vietnamese ambassador, Chien, whom we knew very well. They leapt to their feet, and Ambassador Mahalik said, "This is the true healing between our countries, when the mothers of fallen soldiers can embrace."
wow.
And then the Vietnamese ambassador jumped up. "This is the true meaning of peace between our countries." These are things that I would have never imagined in my life I would ever experience.
The work that you're doing, Jerilyn, is on such a scale that a lot of people think that, how come governments aren't doing this? I mean, you'd
Right.
think that it would fall on a government to take
Yes.
care of unexploded bombs. But here is this tiny woman from the state of Washington who lost a brother, who started a movement, and it literally is a movement of people who love and
Yeah.
support you and love and support the mission. I guess what I'm wondering, Jerilyn, is what's the biggest takeaway of this whole experience for you that you could share, that maybe the rest of us could put into action in our lives?
I would say the biggest takeaway is the opportunity to heal, embrace, work with the Vietnamese people such that the walls of separation have completely melted down. That our U.S. Department of State funds our demining teams. It's incredible. That we've taken more than 1,400 Americans, many, many, many veterans, on citizen diplomacy delegations to Vietnam. Probably about 80 of those we've taken. And the Vietnamese come here. I think you've been in some of our our gatherings when you've met our partners, that we can transform the darkest night into the brightest future.